Good afternoon, Louisiana, and welcome to the Fantasy Roundup for Tuesday, August the 30th, here on bet.NOLA.com, brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. I'm Zach Ewing, your host, with Spencer the Guru Urquhart. This is our last Fantasy Roundup before the NFL season starts. Next week, the schedule is all messed up because of Labor Day, so we're doing a Bayou Bets on Tuesday, so there won't be a Fantasy Roundup. So, long story short, everybody's got their draft in the next week anyway. We got to get to it, Spencer. We got lots to talk about, lots of draft advice, lots of rankings, and all of that.
Yeah, this is crunch time, y'all. This is right where you have those big money leagues, and a lot of people wait till right to the end, right before the season for that. When rightfully so, you don't want to draft hurt players that unknowingly, like if you do an early August draft, you may have lost some players to injury. But now that we're waiting here, it's time to really dive in and hone in on who's worth drafting and who's not.
Absolutely. And we'll get to that in just a second. Do want to remind everyone that we are powered by Caesars Sportsbook. You can get your first bet risk-free up to $1,250. If you don't win that first bet, you basically get a free bet to that amount. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars, and you can get that deal today. You also get 1,000 Caesars rewards points when you sign up for that deal. Pretty cool there. Tara's here. She says, who dat? Spencer, I think would be remiss, and we'll talk more about this weekend on Bayou Bets, but real quick, your reaction to the Saints trading C.J. Gardner-Johnson this morning.
Yeah, I was really surprised by it. I didn't feel like they got enough for him considering how talented he is, and also just he brings that energy to the field where he's kind of just a disruptor on defense. So it's kind of stings no longer having him. Apparently he had wanted a contract extension, and the Saints and him were too far apart. But it's just disappointing to see someone like him get traded right before the season, because you feel like it's just, who's going to fill that nickel role? It's kind of up in the air now. P.J. Williams, the rookie Alontae Taylor, Bradley Roby, none of those sound nearly as appealing as C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So it'll be a tough hole to fill, but hopefully somebody can step up.
Yeah, and I do think the Saints have a good starting secondary. It may be a little bit of an issue of depth. Obviously, he's a good player. My concern, and again, we'll go more in depth this in Thursday's Bayou Bets at 4:00 live here on these same channels. If you're going to trade him, if it's a contract dispute, he wants way too much money, you're too far apart, you figure let's trade him now so we can maximize value. First of all, if that's maximizing value, we got a problem. I guess, and second of all, if that's all you can get for him is a 5th and 6th round pick, and by the way, you're also giving up a 7th round pick in the deal, why not trade him? Let's say that the Miami Dolphins were just offering a 5th and 7th round pick, or they wanted a 6th round pick instead of a 7th round pick. Like, the Dolphins are not a team you're going to be fighting for the last playoff spot in the NFC. The Eagles darn well might be, but not to mention you play the Eagles in week 17. In Philadelphia, it's going to be a tough game. Anybody who's seen Chauncey Gardner-Johnson play, he's going to be geared up for that game. This is not like an all-pro caliber player who can change a game by himself, but he is a good player, and he is going to want to make an impact on that game. So I just thought the whole thing was a little strange. Trading him, I understand it's a business, things happen. Trading him to the Eagles for a low price, that's what was strange to me.
Right. Yeah. I wish he'd have gotten traded to the AFC. You don't want to have someone still in your conference, especially considering the Eagles are going to probably be a threat for a wild card spot there. So it's not ideal, but I guess they figured that was the best they could get. But I kind of wish they'd have just kept him and, rode it out. And so what if you don't get any draft pick compensation? A 5th rounder, odds are that's not going to amount to anything, but it was, honestly, I think it was probably one of those things to where, like, Dennis Allen must not have thought he was a great fit chemistry-wise. He must have thought that he's just, even that nickel role, I guess, wasn't his. Maybe he was wanting to do more than the nickel role, and Dennis Allen was like, well, no, this is your role. And it kind of, I have a feeling there was some more things internally than they're letting on as far as why he got traded.
And that's exactly right. And whether it's even on the field stuff or just he was going to be a malcontent because he didn't get the contract he wanted. And again, we've all seen C.J. Gardner-Johnson play. His attitude, his sort of being a pest on the field can be a very positive thing for the Saints, but you could see how that could go south real quick if he's going to be malcontent.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's probably more than we know on the surface going into this. I was surprised at the destination for where they traded him. That's what surprised me, the destination and the return on their investment, more so than the fact that he was traded at all. But we'll talk more about that on Thursday. Again, 4 o'clock live, Bayou Bets. We also have want to take this opportunity to tell you lots of stuff going on here at bet.nola.com. Saturday, right here at Harrah's Casino. I'm actually in the basement of Harrah's Casino right now. Upstairs, they're opening up the new Caesar Sportsbook here at Harrah's New Orleans on Friday, and we're going to be live there, Spencer, on Saturday for the first big college football day of the year. You, me, Jim will be joined by Kenny Mayne, former SportsCenter anchor. We might have a couple of other guests lined up. That's going to be at 1 o'clock Saturday. And then at 4 o'clock Sunday, we're going to do a big pregame show for the LSU Florida State season opener. And weather permitting, we'll be outside the Caesar Superdome in Champion Square. So it's a big weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I would also like to remind people that we have, I think, 3 spots left if we go to a 12-team league. Otherwise, it's just 1 spot left in our bet.nola.com fantasy football listener league. And this is pretty cool. You get to compete against Spencer. You get to compete against me and Jim. And also, if you win, if you're the top listener finisher, you get 2 tickets to the Saints-Panthers game on January the 8th in Week 18. That's, let's face it, that's a ridiculously cool prize for just, you don't even have to win the fantasy league. You just have to be the top listener finisher. And then we've also got some cool swag, some Caesar Sportsbook swag, and some Bayou Bet swag for people who finish second and third among the listeners. So if you want to sign up for that, drop us some contact info in the comments or email me at zewing@gmail.com. zewing@theadvocate.com. I will lose it in my Gmail account. There's way too much stuff that goes in there. zewing@theadvocate.com. And I will get you signed up today. And we're going to draft, I think, next Tuesday. So instead of doing a fantasy roundup, we'll be drafting next Tuesday. And in the meantime, let's finally talk some fantasy. All right. So we did this last week, Spencer, some draft tips. I have a draft tonight, so I'm paying attention to these. I know you have some drafts this week. So here are the Guru's top 5 draft picks or draft tips to help you with your picks on your fantasy football draft day. Number 1, Spencer, you like to get those running backs early.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, you gotta get them early because they're scarce. There's not many of them that are worth taking. So you gotta get them early because if you wait, you know, guys like the ones you could get later, like Dameon Pierce, for example, is a trendy late round pick. He's now working his way up to the 4th or 5th round. So now that the news cycle's gotten to where we know who the haves and have-nots are, so where you gotta get those backs early because there's only about 20 or so running backs that you can truly trust. And so you want to get them in those first 3 rounds or else you're probably not going to get them at all.
Let's take a minute to talk about Dameon Pierce because today is cut day and Marlon Mack got cut by the Texans. And so the fantasy community is abuzz with the idea of Dameon Pierce. You know, but you said off the air, like you can overreact to this too. You don't want to just automatically take Dameon Pierce in the 3rd round. All of a sudden, where are you taking him? Where do you have him? And we'll get to your rankings in a minute. But what is the proper reaction to that news?
Yeah, it's tough. I say I put him up now. I think he's like, and yeah, you're not too far off you being. I think I'm thinking he will go where I would take him. I think he'll go around the 5th round. I would probably say late 5th, early 6th for me. I mean, I can't quite go 4th. I think that's way too high. 5th though, mid to late 5th. If I still need a running back, like if I would happen to have gone a lot of receivers early on, then yeah, I'd consider him there. But yeah, his stock's through the roof. So if you want him, you got to be willing to pay at least the 5th round, probably.
Yeah, and again, good player, but on a bad offense, don't know that I would reach too far for him. Tip number 2 from Spencer, recapping what we went through last week. The opposite on quarterbacks. Wait till round 7 or later for QBs. You're not a fan of taking a Josh Allen or a Pat Mahomes too high.
No, not in the single quarterback league, because the difference between them and, let's say, a Kirk Cousins or a Derek Carr isn't nearly as much as the difference between like a Austin Eckler and a Damian Harris or something, or just a Devin Singletary, one of those like fringe starting running backs. So yeah, definitely don't reach on a quarterback.
All right, number 3, don't be afraid to reach for high upside players. We talked about Dameon Pierce. He may have sort of jumped the shark here into being like you don't want to reach too far for these guys. But I think the point here is ESPN's rankings, Yahoo's rankings, whatever league format you're using may have a guy ranked, let's say it's the 3rd round, you're picking number 34 and he's ranked number 52. Don't be afraid to take him if you like him.
Right.
Sometimes you got to do that. I mean, if your next pick's not until 55 and you're convinced 52 is the guy you want, who cares what ESPN says?
Yeah, perfect example of that. Travis Etienne and AJ Dillon are 2 guys that I said it last week and I'll say it again. Get them. Don't worry about their ADPs. Get them early, because there's going to be a savvy member in your league that's going to jump on it if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want guys, you better go get them. An auction is a different story because you can kind of save your dollars for the guys you really want. Go a few dollars higher than anybody else is willing to go. No problem, you'll get them. But in a draft, look, you got a minimum of 10 picks between your picks, and sometimes more than that if you're picking. Toward the end of a round, you get 2 picks in a row, and then you wait 22 picks before you can pick again. So if you want a guy, sometimes you got to reach. Once you get to the later rounds, tip number 4, focus your bench picks on running backs and wide receivers. Don't necessarily need a backup quarterback. Don't necessarily need a backup tight end. Definitely don't need a backup kicker or defense. Get those running backs and receivers and work on your depth.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of those in my. We're gonna get to them later. I'm sure the deep sleepers that I got. So I mean, most of the majority of those are running backs and receivers, and those are the kind of guys you can get late on your bench that could really provide that extra oomph to get you over the hump. Could be a good flex player if one of your key guys would happen to go down. You gotta. They don't get you. There's no mulligans. No one's gonna give you a free pass because you lost Christian McCaffrey or whoever it might be. You've got to have depth to replace those guys if needed. And so definitely load up your bench with potential options there, rather than like worrying about, I got to have a backup tight end, because it's like, as long as your starting tight end's healthy, there's no need for that other than the 1 week they're on bye.
Yeah, absolutely. Uncle Big Nick says that Jim vetoed on my auction plan to have Spencer. See, Jim Derry in fantasy. Jim Derry might be. He's so soft when it comes to fantasy sports. He's not here to defend himself, so I won't go too hard. But if it's not exactly the way Jim likes it, Jim doesn't. He's not happy.
Yeah, decimal points. Yeah.
Don't even get into that. Can't have decimal points. Can't have decimal points.
I can't believe that. To me, that's just. I mean, anyone should agree you don't have decimal points. That's just common sense. But Jim, we love him, but man, he's stubborn.
That is a good word for it. Tip number 5 from Spencer the Guru: don't draft your defense or your kicker until the end of the draft. Come on, look, these guys. These are not big scoring players. You should not be, oh my God, I got 2 open spots in my starting lineup. I got to draft them before I draft my 3rd running back. No. Unless you, and you said this last week, Spencer, unless you're in a league where for whatever reason, the rules state that defenses, the scoring rules, defenses can get dozens of points in a week. You don't need to reach, and certainly not for a kicker.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. No, there's just no need for it, because I mentioned earlier about the quarterbacks are not being much point differential between the waiver wire options and the top scorers. It's even more so with defense and kicker. I mean, a lot of weeks the waiver wire guys outscore the top options at these positions. So yeah, definitely no need to reach on them. Just take them. If you have to take them with your last 2. Defense, stream, play the matchups. Kickers, just try to find a dependable one on a high-powered offense.
You're watching the Fantasy Roundup here on bet.NOLA.com. Spencer the Guru is with me, Zach Ewing, and we're getting you ready for draft day, whether it be tonight, later this week, this weekend. Season starts a week from Thursday, so not too much time left. And with that said, we really want to get into your rankings, Spencer, and we're going to start at the most important position there is, and that is the running back position in fantasy football. So, I think this is probably pretty standard. Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey at the top. I've seen it the other way around. I think you have pivoted a little bit. You had Najee Harris 3rd earlier in the summer, so Austin Eckler moving up your board a bit.
Yeah, knocked Najee a little bit because he's been dealing with a foot injury, a Liz Frank injury, all throughout camp, and apparently it's still not 100%. He looks sluggish in the preseason. Their O line has issues. I wasn't as worried about the O line thing. I figured he could still, he could adapt and kind of create his own holes, but with the foot injury now, there's some concern with that. I mean, I would still take him in the first round, but not quite as high as I was on him. I mean, if that foot continues to linger, he might fall below like Cook, Henry, Mixon. I mean, I'd still take him, but I'm not nearly as confident as I was. I feel like he's, yet again, other than Jonathan Taylor, man, this is a year you really want that number 1 overall pick because Jonathan Taylor just looks so dependable because after him, CMC, Eckler, Najee, Dalvin, Henry, they all have, to me, major question marks. Mixon, Swift, like they all have had injuries at some point, fairly major injuries too. And so it's like, the running back position's brutal. I mean, even a guy like Taylor's not immune to it, but it's one of those things you gotta. That's why another reason why I like to take 2 early because if you just take 1, if you do that, the hero RB is it's pretty risky because if your hero ends up injured, well, then you'll end up from a hero to a 0 with your running back room.
Yeah, absolutely. One guy rising up your board toward the bottom here is Alvin Kamara. Looking at this point, like if he's going to be suspended, it's going to be at the very end of the year. Now, obviously, that's a terrible time to be suspended for fantasy football and for the Saints. But if he's not suspended at all, you could get a little bit of a discount on Kamara, who's looked great in preseason camp.
Right. Yeah, I think he's worth taking in the second round. I'm not quite pulling the trigger in the first. Second, I think, is where he should land. I see him go higher than that a lot of times now, though. So I don't think I have him in any leagues. I had a shot to get him in a big money super flex league last weekend. Couldn't pull the trigger, though. Travis Kelce was there, and that's money in the bank. I just couldn't quite do it with Kamara because of that potential suspension later on. It would stink they go all the way to the finals and then boom, they not have him, and then you don't have any options probably at that point. So if you're feeling the risk, go ahead, but I'm not really feeling it because I feel like there's still a decent chance he gets popped.
Second page of running back rankings, starting with Aaron Jones of the Packers. You mentioned Travis Etienne, a guy that you're very high on. I'd say one name a little surprising: Ezekiel Elliott down real low. Obviously, he's facing a timeshare type situation. But walk us through your second page here of running back rankings.
For sure, yeah, the guys, Travis Etienne and Breece Hall are the 2 young guns that I'm targeting. They're in a similar tier with James Conner and Leonard Fournette. All 4 of these are similar. I usually prefer Etienne and Hall because you can usually get them cheaper and they have more upside. Connor and Fournette, yeah, they're more proven. They're in better offenses, but they're both just so brittle. I mean, he talked about those first round guys being injury prone. These guys are even worse. Connor and Fournette, I don't think have ever played a full season in their careers, and it's just constant with them. They're always battling something. So I'm not really willing to pay up for them like a lot of people are. And then down in the 20s there, you can get guys a lot of times like Josh Jacobs and Elijah Mitchell at a discount because of the fear of committees. And then Zeke, I am not touching Ezekiel Elliott this season. I mean, I'd almost rather take AJ Dillon over him. I know I have Zeke 1 ahead, but he'll probably get more of a workload being that Dillon's still the B behind Aaron Jones. But I think Dillon's going to have a huge year, and personally think he's going to really take a step forward and probably exceed my projection of him.
Uncle Big Nick asks why nobody likes Josh Jacobs. He's just not getting a lot of opportunity in Raiders camp.
Yeah, actually, I don't mind him if you can get him at a value. Like here, he comes in at 20. A lot of lists have him like below that. So Nick's right as far as he's not getting a whole lot of love. So you can get him at a value. He's a talented back. I know they got Zamir White over there now, but I mean, he's a 4th round rookie. I don't see him coming in and taking the job from Jacobs right away. And plus, Jacobs is in a contract year, so they're probably just going to be like, we're going to use this guy until he runs out on us. It's not like it's a long-term investment. So I actually like the value you can get a lot of times with Jacobs in redraft leagues because he's a guy that should be an RB2 that a lot of times you can get as a flex or cheaper. So yeah, I don't mind him at all.
Another comment from Uncle Big Nick. A little breaking news happened just before the show. We came on the air. The Saints are releasing Ian Book news has broken. Now, this does not mean Ian Book will not end up on the Saints. He could end up on the practice squad. He's got to clear
That's
waivers.
what
Somebody
kind
else
of
could
I
pick him up.
expected.
Now, I don't know that he's shown anything that any other team around the league would jump at the chance to sign Ian Book. But that's, yeah. Uncle Big Nick, going back to the Raiders, mentions McDaniels likes to run.
Yeah, he does.
What's up, Jerry? What's good, buddy? Glad to have you here. Let's move on to wide receiver, Spencer. This is sort of your other top position. Top of the leaderboard here, just a little bit different than the way it finished last year. Obviously, Cooper Kupp was the smash play in season-long fantasy football last year. You have him at number 2, right between the two LSU boys, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
Right. Yeah, I feel like the top 3 is pretty clear that the LSU boys and Cup, they're just so dynamic, so dominant. Devontae Adams not too far behind them as well, and Stephon Diggs. I mean, these are the kind of guys that you can take in the mid to late first and feel really confident, and that their injury risk isn't nearly as high as the running backs. I mean, obviously no one's immune to injury in the NFL, but if these guys their chances of getting hurt are a lot less than a lot of those running backs. So I would still be willing to take take them, or as I take a chance. I mean, you're not really taking much of a chance. It's a pretty safe investment. And then further down here, there's kind of a tier break. I mean, so if you don't get one of these, if you take a running back first, like if you have Jonathan Taylor or something, you're probably not going to get one of those top 5 receivers. So you'll probably have to target the likes of Debo, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, or all explosive playmakers. But I'm kind of liking, though, even more so, like as far as the value, the guys like Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, and Keenan Allen, because a lot of times you can get them in the 3rd, sometimes the 4th round, and I'm thinking those guys could end up. They all could have potential to be top 5 receivers, especially Pittman. He's someone I'm targeting heavily.
Let's talk just a little bit of shop before we get to the second half of receivers, because you mentioned something interesting, Spencer, that this is a year you'd like to have the number 1 pick because you're that sold on Jonathan Taylor as the safest high-end, high-floor option. What if you don't? Okay, so we know number 1 you're taking Taylor. What if you're picking 3, 4? How low does it have to go before you're going to go to one of these top receivers with your first pick, before you're going to take a Justin Jefferson over, as we go back to our running backs, let's say a Najee Harris or a Dalvin Cook or a Derrick Henry? At what point are you pivoting and making that first pick a wide receiver? Let's say PPR format.
I would say, shoot, I mean, 6th pick, like some 5th, 6th pick, if like the first 4, those all running backs, like I wouldn't be scared to start off the receiver run by taking Jefferson, because then there's a chance you could still get like a Javonte Williams on the way back, or Saquon. You should still be able to get a RB1 caliber talent in round 2. So no, don't be afraid to take Jefferson or Cup if you get like that 6th, 7th, 8th pick. You're probably the middle. What do I do? But if you're stuck, take the safe bet. Take the receiver to the 100 receptions, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, and money in the bank. I mean, that's something that's very valuable in fantasy. That security of having that, where with these running backs, we all know the risk involved. So if you're not really feeling that, then go ahead and take the safe points with the WR.
And how about the way the board falls if you have a back half of the first round pick? If you're picking 10th, 12th, somewhere in that range, you can go get a maybe DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, Alvin Kamara, that range. Or if you flip over to the receivers, maybe you're in the Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams range. And obviously in a snake draft, you have 2 picks in quick succession there. Are you going one of each? I know we know from your tips you're not taking 2 wide receivers, or are you targeting 2 running backs and getting that taken care of and then going down the board for your receivers?
Yeah, I usually like that the back end. I kind of like that spot because you have a lot of flexibility. You can either go RB, get like a Swift mix and nice duo like that, or if there's a big run on running backs, then just go ahead and take like a Chase mix and duo. Or you probably don't want 2 Bengals, probably Chase Swift or Chase Javonte. Have one of those top stud receivers as well as a top 10 running back. So that's generally what I do, unless there's a big receiver run. Then you go running back. But generally, I like to go running back, receiver at that spot.
Yeah, and I mean, I won a league last year with Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon. If you're going to stack an offense, you could do worse than the Cincinnati Bengals, who are going to put up some points and some yardage. Second half of wide receivers, and here's where we get into some more guys who are more hit or miss. A lot of these guys are not going to be every week performers. You're going to have to kind of plug and play some WR2s, some WR3s here. But walk us through this page here.
Yeah, this list is these guys, a little more volatile, but there's still a lot of value to be had here. The top part here, like Evans through Hollywood Brown, are all guys that could be WR1s this season, because they're all, I believe, other than Mike Williams, all number one targets on their teams. And Brown will be until Hopkins comes back, but yeah, everyone else should be a number one target there. I really like Mike Williams, though. He's been rising up my board. I feel like he should see even more targets this year with Justin Herbert and one of the best offenses in the game. So I really like him there. Deontay, I feel pretty good about, even though the quarterback situation's unsettled there in Pittsburgh. I think I mentioned it before. I don't see the Big Ben loss affecting him too much. He might not catch quite as many passes, but he should see more yards. And in Hollywood Brown, I really like as someone that I think could be a league winner, especially early on. And then if you feel like, the Hopkins return might hurt him, well, you could then trade him, because I'm sure he'll have big numbers for these first few weeks. And then the after him is a tad bit of a drop off, but I mean, Allen Robinson, Jerry Jeudy, both are pretty solid. And then like Gabriel Davis, a high upside option. Darnell Mooney got a lot of potential as a number one target. And then two guys that I'm fading in most leagues, Metcalf and Waddle. They made my list, but I'm not really feeling them. Metcalf due to quarterback concerns, and Waddle with the Tyreek Hill there. And he's also dealing with an undisclosed, I forgot what they said, lower leg injury, I think. So a lot of concerns around Waddle.
Yeah, and I think you raise a good point with the bottom of that board there. The guys like Metcalf and Waddle, who, yes, you have them as top 24 wide receivers. You have them as WR2s in a 12-team league. But if you value them less than your league mates do in a given league, that is much more important than exactly where you have them ranked. And that's where it's important to kind of go in with some individual rankings. Take the default rankings in your league format and move guys around. Like, hey, I like Jerry Jeudy with Russell Wilson a lot more. I'm going to move him up. Or I like AJ Brown in Philly now. I'm going to move him up. And that's what's more important than it is exactly where you have them ranked, because you've got to you've got to play the room, right? And that works for an auction too. Have a price point in mind. Okay, I'm not going above $10 on this guy. He's probably going to go for 15. I have to be okay with somebody else getting him. That's fine. Now, if for some reason nobody else likes him and he's cheap, sure, I'll take him for $10. Have a price point in mind, and if it goes beyond that, sit out. Save your money for somebody you really like. So it's all relative.
Yeah.
Moving on to quarterbacks, Spencer. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you going to say?
Oh yeah, about the price point thing, because a lot of times, those guys will go, the ones you don't want, like the Waddle or Metcalf, and then just we can get your guys later on a lot of times. So just don't panic pick and just feel like, oh, just because the list has so and so ranked high that I've got to take him here. If someone you're just not messing with, then steer clear. There's a reason that those guys fall a lot of times.
Yeah, that list should be a guide for you. It should not be you don't want to be auto drafting off of that list. That's not a good way to go. Moving on to quarterbacks, and this is where you say wait until the 7th round. You wait until the 7th round, you're probably not getting one of those top 3 guys. Maybe not Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson either, but you're okay with that.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of times you can get Joe Burrow, because the fantasy community is very divided on Joe Burrow. As far as some people like him as an elite option, other people saying he's a fluke. I've seen some lists that don't even have him in their top 12, which I find to be utterly disrespectful considering what Joe Burrow has shown he can do in that high-powered offense. I mean, that's just nuts to me. I mean, Joe Burrow has proven himself time and time again. I don't know what more the man needs to do. I mean, he's came off major knee surgery and had a great year, super efficient, like threw for like 4,500 yards on not even a whole lot of pass attempts. I mean, there's no telling what he might do this year if he gets more opportunity, which he probably will with the elite cast of weapons he has. So he's probably my favorite target among this top group. And in the mid tier, Jalen Hurts I like a lot due to his rushing ability, and he can tend to be he usually had a lot cheaper than like Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray. Even like Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott, I see Hurts fall like really late in some leagues because people don't believe in him. But to me, he's proven himself. He's proven to be a strong fantasy asset. And then Trey Lance there down at the 12 spot, keep a close eye on him. He's the full-time starter now for the Niners. I know that's Uncle Big Nick's guy, and I like me some Trey Lance. I think he's gonna have a nice year.
You talk about a guy on the way up. If you want him, you may have to reach for him, and be prepared to do that. You may have to take him over some of those guys who are higher on that list. The last position we'll talk about, again, kickers and defenses. Look, do what you want. I mean, people took the Minnesota Vikings defense real high last year. They were terrible. There's just not that much difference. Yeah, that's right. Tell them, Spin. Tell them the Niners are good. Make Uncle Big Nick happy. You're going to do good this year.
Believe me, I don't like saying the Niners are good, but I got to admit when I like something I like.
I think they very well might win that division.
Yeah,
but that is for Thursday's Bayou Bets and some NFL preview. Tight ends, our last position we're going to talk about here. Again, Mr. Automatic, Travis Kelce at the top.
Yep. Yeah. And I had this big decision in that money league. I was like, do I go with the security of Kelce or swing for the fences for Kamara or Saquon? Saquon Barkley was there too. And man, that was such a tough call. But I felt like if it would have been even tougher, it was just one of the running backs there. But with both of them there, I was like, well, I don't even know which running back. So, you know what? Kelce is the clear cut, top pass catcher. At that point, all the top receivers had gone. So I was like, I'll get him to secure the tight end position. And then, him, Pitts, and Andrews, all very, very much sure things there early on. And I'm also really liking Dalton Schultz. I've mentioned him before, but I've moved him up over George Kittle now. I feel like he's going to really do well. I know Kittle probably still do better on a per game basis, but considering Kittle's injury history, I'm really high on Dalton Schultz. And another tweak I made was TJ Hawkinson over Darren Waller. With Darren Waller's, he's picked up an injury recently. He might miss the first week or two. So, and I already wasn't high on Waller to begin with, and I'm thinking Hawkinson should do pretty well in what should be an improved Lions offense.
That is the story with tight ends. Another comment from our friend Uncle Big Nick. Jim, please, God, tell me that's true. Please tell me that's true. If we could prove that, we could hold that over Jim's head for the entire forever. Please tell me that's true. Do not pay $15 for a kicker in an auction league. This is our big money advice. Don't pay $15 for a kicker in an auction league.
I was like, who could it have been? I was like, Will Lutz. $15.
He won. He still won the league. Okay, well, I mean, maybe everybody else is paying big money for kickers too. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
you can win a league.
Yeah, I was like, there are some leagues that favor kickers, but I still wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of budget we're talking about too, right? All right. The way you can win a league is by making the right picks. Obviously, you want to nail your first few picks. But what separates you, if everybody kind of, goes by the board in the early rounds, it's not any major injuries, or if you do, okay, you're not going to win this year. But those of you who don't have any major injuries, the thing that can separate you is picking up that guy real late, 14th, 15th, 16th round, who ends up being a huge asset to your team, ends up being in your starting lineup in the playoffs, pops off one of these weeks to get you through a playoff round or to win you the championship. That's where I want to end this show. We're going to talk about some deep, deep sleepers. And some of these guys you pick, Spencer, maybe won't be super deep. Like a Romeo Doubs might be a little bit higher up. But a lot of these other guys, like, they might even go undrafted. And it's worth taking, obviously you want to have a kicker and a defense just so that you have that lineup spot filled and you're not missing points. But maybe your last pick besides those guys, you grab one of these guys and maybe turn them into something.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and Dobbs is somebody that I thought his stock would have gone up a little more than it has. I mean, he's still like, you can still get him mainly in the double-digit rounds, which is what this list is, guys you can get in the 10th round or later. And Isaiah Pacheco, another one that's really been on the rise for the Chiefs. Ronald Jones did make the 53-man roster, but I'm not concerned about that. I think Pacheco is still going to be the number 2 to CEH and potentially the number 1 if CEH suffers his annual injury, which has been his problem. And his lack of performance, too. So even if CEH is healthy, I could still see Pacheco getting a big workload there. Same with Tyler Algier. The Falcons' backfield very much up for grabs. I see Algier seeing a pretty nice workload at some point. Mike Davis is on here just for the sheer fact that everyone's still hurt in Baltimore. Dobbins might not play week 1. Gus Bus is on the pup. So with their running back still very much banged up, Davis could see a big workload in what should be a power run team in Baltimore. And all those receivers like Collins, Palmer, Pierce, all high upside guys that you can get basically for free.
Absolutely. And they can win you league. As I say, I mean, sometimes these guys at the end of the year, you wonder how the hell they weren't drafted because they end up being, look, Cordero Patterson last year ended up being a very valuable fantasy player. Now, that was pretty obvious from the first week on that he was going to be. But if you didn't have that number 1 waiver spot or you didn't want to spend a bunch of your fab on Cordero Patterson after one good week, boy, if you drafted him in the 15th round, you were sitting pretty because that guy ended up being like an RB2 for the rest of the year. So there are guys out there like that who can end up winning you a league or just increasing your depth. And that's what we're all about. This is the Fantasy Roundup for August the 30th. About done. We want to send you all off and wish you good luck in your drafts. A couple of things before we go. Number 1, haven't checked my email, but if you want to get in on the bet.NOLA.com listener league, send me an email, zewing@theadvocate.com. The first 3 people who do it get those last spots. And again, the top listener finisher 2 tickets to Saints Panthers on January the 8th as a grand prize, and also got some Caesar Sportsbook swag and some Bayou Bet swag. If you're the second place listener finisher, we'll let you choose among that. Third place will get the whatever's left over. So lots of prizes out there. It's free to play. All you got to do is sign up, and we draft a week from tonight, next Tuesday night. So Spencer, as you send people off to go do their drafts, what is your final word of advice?
Just stay level-headed because it's one of those things. I see it all the time in drafts. People make panic picks and do crazy strategies and all this. So just stay level-headed. If you want to have a few beers, that's fine. Also, don't get drunk in draft. If you want to drink a little bit, that's fine. But some of these home leagues I see end in disaster because I got plastered at the draft and ended up reaching on a kicker. So it's like, don't be that guy. Don't be Taco from the league or something. So, you got to stay level-headed, just be smart about it. Just do your research, have fun too. Obviously you want to have fun. We do this for fun. You don't want to turn this into a freaking full-time job unless you want to be like me. But I don't know. I've just loved this so much since I was a little kid to where I've do it for a job now. It's pretty wild to think about. But for most of y'all out there, just keep having fun, because even though this is my job, I still very much have fun doing it. So have fun and be smart and come out of there with the stacked team to get to win the bag and whatever bragging rights are on the line.
Yeah, and that was going to be my point, is like, look, yes, take it seriously because winning is more fun, but fun is the point of this. And so if there's a guy you really like, don't take him 5 rounds before you should go. But if you take him 2 rounds before you should go, no big deal. That's cool. Like that's the guy you really like. You want to watch him play. You think he's going to have a good year. Have some fun with it. We don't know. We don't know if the guy drafted in the 5th round is going to be better than the guy drafted in the 7th round. Nobody knows for sure. All you can do is project. Spencer's very good at it. There are people who are very good at it, but that doesn't mean they're going to be right 100% of the time. And so if you like a guy, go get him. Have some fun. Have a beer. Don't get so drunk that you take Tyler Bass for $10 in an auction, but have some fun. That's all I'm saying.
Oh man.
And yes, for our fantasy players, if you ever need fantasy golf help, we'll have Uncle Big Nick back on for the majors next year.
For sure.
The man will help you out. Having said that, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back at 4:00 on Thursday. Big weekend to come. Bayou Bets live 4:00 Thursday. That's our regular show. Then 1:00 Saturday and 4:00 Sunday, our big college football preview shows from the new Caesar Sportsbook at Harrah's, New Orleans, and then from the Champion Square outside the Superdome on Sunday, weather permitting. Otherwise, we'll be back at Harrah's, and we'll preview LSU, Florida State. So tune in live for those. And also let me know, zewing@theadvocate.com, if you would like to sign up for the bet.nola.com listener league. And we got some cool prizes for that. So that's it for us. For Spencer the Guru, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for joining us.